Pleasure. Uh, it's a pleasure seeing you again. I remember seeing you many years ago when you were leading the high-level panel for the African Development Bank, which led to a major document on fragility, ending fragility, and I'm very grateful to see that you are continuing to support the same causes even after leaving office. So congratulations for the way you led your country and also for the support you've been providing us. And I also want to thank the organizers for bringing the African Development Bank into this and for keeping us. Thank you, Ambassador Laura. As you know, President Adesina couldn't make it, I actually landed in Abidjan and I got a message saying you have to go back to Geneva. So I said, how can I make this possible? So it took me 2 hours to get a plane and then to be here late. So apologies, but I'm happy to be here. Now, I just the easy part, Your Excellency, is talking last so that you don't have to repeat what everybody else has said. But you can also refer to what everybody has not said. Right? So for us at the African Development Bank, migration is really part and parcel of the broader economic and social transformation of our era. So it's not something new, but what is key for us is that we want to make sure that we don't view migration only as a crisis. We think that migration is not something to be managed only. It's something that promotes economic integration and fosters trade and investments. So for some of the same reality on the ground, the receiving countries see it as a potential problem, and the countries from where the migrant left see this as an opportunity. So we really want to stress that one. Indeed, migration facilitates development, and development facilitates migration. It is this symbiotic relationship that should be enhanced whenever we are talking about migration, and whereas they are always, particularly currently, in the area of security, whether you're talking about the Horn of Africa or we are talking about the Sahel, we tend to confuse the migrants and the actors of security. As you know, out of the 30 million African migrants in 2015, half of them were migrants in other African countries, including IDPs, internally displaced people. So when we talk about migration, it's not only, we shouldn't be talking only about migration of Africans to other places in the world, but we should also pay attention to migrants and migration in other African countries. We've said it before, and I've heard it this morning. Africa remains one of the least economically integrated regions of the world and restrictive for intra-African mobility. And in our view at the African Development Bank, this must be changed. Now, the African Union is here. We on our mobility index on migration, we found out that in some cases, it is more difficult for Africans to get visas to other African countries than it is for other nationalities to get visas. And this must be changed. Now, before I move, I really want to take note of some of the positive achievements that we see in Africa. So not everything is negative, Your Excellency. The Africa Visa Openness Report of 2016 and 2017 pointed out that 4 years ago, 5 countries had liberal visa policies for Africans. Today, there are 14 countries. I think that is positive. It can be better, but it's also positive. And I think the African Union should be praised for that one. Today, we are witnessing a domino effect. The CEMAC, which is one of the most difficult, that's the Central African region, is actually exploring visa-free zones. And ECOWAS, we don't talk a lot about ECOWAS, but ECOWAS for decades has been a free visa and movement of people zone. So this is important, and I really want to put it there. And I want to stress that liberalization of visa has not resulted in security concerns. So there's not a link between free movement of people and insecurity. To the contrary. Now, what is, in our view, at the African Development Bank an issue is the implementation of the adopted regulations and regulatory frameworks to address the migration. And that is something that maybe the high level, I will come back to it at the end, the high level panel should also be addressing. And I just want to name six frameworks and policies that have been adopted by the African Union and continues to be where implementation is an issue. The African Union Convention on Cross-Border Cooperation, that's also known as the Niamey Convention. Okay, it's a fantastic, that was in 2014. I think we should start seeing movement on those. The African Common Position on Migration and Development, that's the 2015 framework. The Joint Labor Migration Program, that's also in 2015. The AU Border Program and Measures, that's in 2016. The African Union Passport, that's 2016, right? Now, that passport is a reality. I have one, right? But we need to make it available to other citizens, not only privileged people like some of us who can have the passport and then, of course, visit Africa. We think at the African Development Bank, and President Adesina has said it, Africa can and should do more on migration and free movement of people. This is important. It's a collective goal, and we can only achieve it with all the African countries and our partners. Now, the African Development Bank vision of a transformed Africa goes through what is known as our high fives. I'm not going to be repeating all of them, but I think that there are major components, particularly in 3 areas that I want to highlight. One is energy and transport. They go together. The interconnections in the area of energy and the area of roads is critical in migration. It's also critical in trade, and it's critical in regional integration. I have so many notes. Now, the third element of it is what we know, the high level, the Feed Africa, where we have our own approach to integrating agriculture and technological advancement in research. And finally, I want to mention that one of the key elements in the creation of the African Development Bank is the integration of Africa. So that is on our I was going to say birth certificate, where the African Development Bank has been trusted with the economic integration of the continent, and that's what we are doing. Now, for me, the high-level panel on international migration in Africa should seek the support of all partners, meaning bilateral and multilaterals, but must place Africans at the forefront of the African migration story. We should be cleaning our own house before going out there. Advocating more development for Africa is a way for promoting intra-movement of people, reducing African migration to other continents. But as long, and I said it many times, and I want to say it and repeat it again, Madam President, as long as the African youth, particularly in this era of technology, will continue to see the light on the other side, and we live in darkness on our side, they will be migrating to the light. We can't stop them. So what we need to do together is to make sure that we bring more light and more development on our side with the support of our partners, so that our youngsters can stay in this continent and contribute to the economic development. I want to thank you.
Thank you so much. There's so much you said that you pick up on. We have an opportunity to wrap up to talk about that. So thank you so much, Mr. Kasuba. We now go to the next section. And she will sit in for him?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So we are moving to the next session, and I was told to make sure that everyone in that panel should be counting the minutes. We will be giving 1 minute warning and then 1 minute out. So you have 5 minutes each. The first speaker is Mr. Omar. From the African Union Association.
So thank you, and Your Excellency, Madam Chair, and I am going to make a presentation on the AU policies framework, and just start with the mandate of the African Union Commission, which derived from the AU Constitutive Act 2001, and we have as a issue contributing to leadership and continental technical support to member states as well as to the legs. And also we are working on building one voice on migration issues on international platforms. And also we are providing technical coordination to member states in implementing the AU policy framework decisions and resolution taken by the Assembly of Heads of State as well as by the Executive Council of the African Union. In terms of policy framework, some were already mentioned. The migration policy framework for Africa, which was revised in 2016 and adopted in Kigali. The AU, ILO, IOM, ECA Joint Level Migration Program for Development and Integration, and also the Protocol on Free Movement Right of Residents and Establishment in Africa, and the Common African Position on the Global Compact, which is currently guiding the AU African group in the negotiation for this Global Compact. And the African Continental Free Trade Area also is a very important policy reference for us. The Plan of Action Against Human Trafficking, which is going to be revised, and some regional initiative like in the Horn of Africa, and at international level, we have the AU, some platform of dialogue between policy dialogue between with European Union as well as with Arab League. And now, in terms of update, the migration policy framework, which was adopted last year, just start the sensitization also providing technical support to member states and RECs in terms of adopting, domesticating this policy framework into their national and regional policy frameworks. We are also working in the establishment of the Migration Observatory Center in Mali, as well as a Regional Operations Center in the Horn of Africa. And we are also, we are also providing this, strengthening the EU captain capacity to support member states. In terms of update, I just want to focus here on the Labour Migration Advisory Committee, which was established by the head of states, and it holds its first meeting this year, just last month in Dakar. And the members are, all RECs are members of this Labour Migration Advisory Committee. We have also social partners who are represented by Business Africa for the employers group, by ITUC and OR2 for the workers group at Continental level. The Pan-African Parliament also is a member of this committee. It was represented by the chair of the Committee of Migration of the Pan-African Parliament. The AU Human Rights and People's, the AU Human and People's Rights Commission also is a member of it, because we have this human rights approach on this. The African Committee of Experts on the Right and Welfare of the Child, because children also are concerned by this migration issue. ECOSOC is a member of it. Women cross-border traders are represented in this committee by the SADC and COMESA Association of Women Cross-Border Traders. The Pan-African University is represented by the one in Yaoundé, and Diaspora organization are represented by 2 organizations in this committee. And we have also IM, ILO, and ECA as members of this, as party of this joint development program. Now, we have also a 3-year project currently, we start this year, supported by member states, Sweden, and GIZ. And the first meeting, I already said it, and the first and second labor migration statistic reports. The first was in 2017, and we are currently working on the second report. As it stands today, we have received a questionnaire from 44 member states. They filled the questionnaire through their national statistic offices and sent it back to the Commission. And we are going to do the treatment and start producing the draft, and then validation process should start with all the member states, so that the report will not be put into question by any country. And we have also the social security access and portability. A study was done, and now the ILO is implementing a 2-year project funded by the European Union for social security access and portability for migrant workers within Africa. And a study was also done on skills portability. What I can say now is that we are going to work this year on skills recognition and portability in the laser industry in Africa. And we are working with the Laser Institute of COMESA to lead the technical aspect of this work. On labor migration, we are also going to work on labor migration and mobility of health workers. It's going to be done this year, a study, and then validation will follow. We develop also a communication strategy in Addis Ababa in June this year, and a training and capacity building plan will be designed in Casablanca this year, next month, as to support member states. And then we have political affairs regarding the protocol on free movement of people, of persons. It is in the ambit of the Department of Political Affairs, which is working to develop member states and to accompany member states and support them in implementing it. And it contains also, it also involves the issue of the African passport to be developed. Political affairs will work mainly on the parameters which will be used by member states to design an African passport for African citizens, as it is done currently in ECOWAS region, for example. And we are working on this the case of Libya. We have a group set up, put in place, involving IOM, European Union, and other partners, and led by the Commissioner, the Excellency Commissioner of Social Affairs, who is the special envoy of the chair of the African Union in the Libya situation. and they are having a regular meeting to follow up on the situation in Libya. And this is just joint task force in particular, which was put in place. And we are continuing to work with the REX in terms of the and member state also in terms of the implementation of the migration policy framework, and also through the RCPS with the IOM and other initiatives. And European Union, now we have, I already mentioned it, we have policy dialogue processes with other regions like European Union and also the Arab League as well. Now, in terms of the high-level panel today, it was mentioned by Toko. She recalled the context. The 2016 joint AU and ACA minister decision provided mandate to the high-level panel, which is holding today its second meeting. As an advisory committee, the high-level panel should provide the necessary policy advocacy and support the implementation of the ongoing AU migration agenda in the continent. I think it was said many times by those who took the floor before me. And this is the last one. And AU, as a conclusion and way forward, AU remains committed to support the work of the panel, the high-level panel. And the AUC, in partnership with ECA, will further continue to provide technical backstopping to the panel as directed by the 2016 joint ministerial meeting. I thank you.
Thank you. There's a lot we can unpack. There's a discussion time, so hopefully some of you are taking notes. I am taking notes on the healthcare workers. It's a very important thing. The next person is Ms. Cynthia, but I don't see her. Is there anyone representing her? You are? Okay. Can you keep it to 5 minutes and less, please?
I'll try for less. Let me so we're in this partnership with the African Union and the IOM. Other than what my colleague Omar has highlighted, let me just say, from the ILO perspective, we see this as the implementation of the joint labor migration program can be an opportunity for the implementation of the Global Compact, because the areas of focus of the two programs are very similar. So we think that since there is already political momentum on the joint program, we may as well look at the implementation of the Global Compact in that way. And let me just highlight some of the things other than those that Omar has highlighted, which have already been achieved in the context of the joint labor migration program. We developed the first report on labor migration statistics. There was a lot of debate in the morning on the need for data, and it collected data from 34 national statistical offices. And I think I just want to emphasize the importance, Madam President, of capacitating the statistical offices in the countries. Many countries are no longer very much willing to only rely on data from international organizations. There are statistical offices that are doing a great job, and I think a lot of the domestic resource mobilization support could actually be directed at assisting them to do this work already. Allow me to just highlight that from the SADC region where I'm coming from, the member states have already adopted a labor migration statistical module, which is integrated into the labor force surveys of all the countries, the 16 countries in that sub-region. They run this labor force survey every 2 years and produce a consolidated report reflecting migration trends in the SADC region. And yes, domestic resource mobilization could assist some of the other member states who are not able to run it on a 2-year basis. So the data challenge is actually already being addressed, and we just need more effort to push it along. And maybe advocacy with the presidents could assist in this regard. The second area I want to highlight is the issue of skills, portability of skills at the regional level, so that if it's an engineer in Malawi, it's an engineer in Zimbabwe and also in South Africa. And we have done a research on this, and they've adopted a portability of skills framework, which provides an in-depth study of the current portability initiatives in Africa in general and identifies challenges and provides recommendations. This issue of portability of skills will ensure that the skills embedded in migrants are utilized effectively. Too often now we have doctors who are not able to practice in other countries because their skills are not recognized. The final area I want to highlight is the issue of access to social security for migrant workers, including portability regimes. And this requires to provide understanding of the challenges and constraints, but also the support required, the policy making support required, and the creation of operational frameworks for the improvement of social security access and portability benefits for migrant workers. And in this regard, let me just give you again an example from Southern Africa where they've adopted a portability of social security benefits. There is now an ongoing project, as already highlighted, with EU funding, where we're trying to look at particularly mining and agriculture in the sub-region and how to move the portability of benefits of people in the whole sub-region. I just wanted to give these 3 practical examples on data, skills, and portability of social security benefits, and to say in all the areas, work has already been started. African member states are already active in it. What this panel could most assist with is to give the necessary impetus and push to make this rolled out on a much larger scale. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Ms. Maria Menton, Head of Labor Mobility and Development at
Hello everyone, I'm here with a special microphone. I hope this is how it's supposed to be working. I'm really pleased to join this high-level panel at the middle of very important discussions. And you're really right, a lot has already been mentioned in terms of what the priorities are in the area of supporting labor mobility on the continent. So it is an easy job for me to do. To just complement the experience of partnering with lots of governments, communities, and stakeholders, and of course our cooperation with UN partners such as our law has been long-standing, and indeed together we have already achieved a lot of very concrete deliverables. And of course our partners from African Union are there, and we are actually there for you, because the way how our organization operates is that we really support the existing processes and frameworks of cooperation from the technical perspective. And this is probably my message, the key message that I want to today mention as we look ahead, and I think that's the objective here. Of course, a lot of frameworks and processes have been set in practice. And overall, if we look at the experience of our organization, over the last 5 years, we have implemented 52 programs on the continent, and more or less equally spread across the 4 regions where we operate. Majority of them went to the programs in Southern Africa. But around 70% of these projects, we have done our internal assessment, have been primarily focused on building capacity of the stakeholders, of supporting the development of policies, legislative frameworks. Again, these are extremely important processes to support. But I believe, as you, John, completely correctly said from the African Development Bank, it is right now going down to the nitty-gritty of really the implementing and making sure that the policies and frameworks, they really bring the desired outcome to migrants, families, and the communities where they are departing from or where they are coming into. And this is where IAM is very happy to offer to our partners and the governments in the region, development cooperation stakeholders, our rich experience maybe from other regions where we support labor mobility along all its cycle. We've been implementing large-scale programs where we really go with migrant workers before they depart their home community. We conduct and carry out a lot of pre-departure orientation and counseling services. If we take 2017, we have done around 80,000 consultations. That's, of course, going along different types of programming, but I think that's the experience which we offer also to our programs in Africa, because indeed we've been operating a lot of practical support to movements for different categories of migrants over decades.
Of course, information sharing and here, of course, counseling. We would like to tap into the modern technologies. We have just recently launched the MIGAP application, which offers opportunity to inform migrants before they go about the conditions of work and about the remittances corridors, the cheapest ones. What is interesting indeed, when we look into labor migration or labor mobility, for us, it's not just the one type of migration. We do approach process from all perspectives. Indeed, as you correctly mentioned, migrants will achieve their best outcome once we comprehensively look into all the needs that they have, and that's access to health services, that's indeed portability of their benefits, that's indeed about whether their job employment takes place at the right skill level, because the worst which can happen is that migrants go work and they waste their resources that they have been collecting in terms of their education back at home. So how do we best support labor migrant workers along the process before departure, during employment, and of course working in partnership, ensuring that they of course get a job in the formal sector? That's a critical challenge that we need to address, and not only in the context of Africa, but also of course in many other contexts. How do we ensure that the employment takes place in context of the decent work conditions? And this is where, again, some of the things which we are thinking of working is to partner with the private sector itself. What we see as a trend in other regions is that the big brands come towards us, asking us to help them look into the labor supply chains, making sure that migrant workers are employed indeed in decent conditions. And our work, for instance, on partnering and creating ethical recruitment standards for those who are involved in matching jobs and migrant workers are very important. And of course, upon arrival back home, how we ensure that the skills that migrants acquired can be utilized in the countries and communities of origin. So again, the call for action, call for implementation in close partnership with all of us, and I fully agree with you that all the initiatives we're right now discussing GLMP would be a really good testing ground for us as we move towards implementation of the compact. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This is great. Thank you. Everyone was on time. Thank you. I think what I've heard, we have a 20 minutes discussion point, but I just wanted to comment on throughout all the discussion, what I'm hearing is the 5 determinants of poverty or prosperity. So access to healthcare, education, housing, food, and employment. These are critical for the well-being of individuals and families. So I think it has been discussed throughout. The question is, we know what the issue is, and I also have heard about the implementation. Usually great ideas disappear because of lack of capacity to implement, and I think that's something we should be aware of, because we don't want to just shoot out ideas if we don't have the infrastructure to implement those ideas. And I don't also think we should kill ideas just because we think we cannot implement them. So I think we have to have a balancing view on both. And with that, I just want to leave it open to discussion. And so any questions that you may have, please ask questions as much as possible. Thank you.